In 1932, as America sunk deeper into the calamity of the Great Depression, it perhaps surprised no one that even Hollywood couldn't escape the disaster that had befallen America's capitalist economy. Nearly every studio in Hollywood is feeling the effects. Fox, Paramount, Universal, Warner Brothers, all were reporting losses of up to $10 million. The only major studio that was flourishing was MGM, which maintained its status of not only boasting more stars than there are in the heavens, but also in understanding how to effectively sell those stars to a cash-strapped public. Much of this selling strategy came from the studio's preeminent whiz kid, Irving G. Thalberg, who developed the idea of taking the biggest names that MGM had under contract and putting them all into the same movie. The idea of the all-star epic was not entirely new, but Thalberg understood how to make it a massive draw. Grand Hotel was a multi-layered, multi-character study of the personal peccadillos of several characters who converged on the same hotel at the same time. The hook was that those characters were played by no less than John Barrymore, Wallace Beery, Louis Stone, Gene Hersholt, and Lionel Barrymore, with the major headliner being Greta Garbo. Yet the surprise to anyone watching the film is that it's not Garbo that leaves the lasting impression. That honor goes to a luminous 24-year-old studio contract player from San Antonio, Texas, named Lucille LeSueur. She's better remembered as Joan Crawford. This zillion-dollar cast would help elevate the film not only to box office success, but also into Oscar's inner circle, where it became the only film in history to win Best Picture and receive no other nominations. In one of the great ironies of the awards' storied history, a film packed with the biggest stars in Hollywood left every one of those actors out in the cold. Hello and welcome to the Best Picture winners, a full-on survey of the films Oscar crowned the best of the year. My name's Jerry, and I'll be looking at each film from each year of the Academy's first century and the people and events surrounding it. This time we're looking at Grand Hotel, a star-studded examination of a human traffic jam at a posh hotel where people come, people go, but nothing ever happens. As a species, human beings have perhaps an innate and somewhat perverse need to check in on each other. An alien studying us from afar might well note, we're a nosy lot. That makes up the crux of much of our entertainment. In the testament of humans attempting to understand one another, we spend more than half of our lives watching each other. One author who understood this very well was Austrian-born Vicky Baum, whose life could have been a beefy novel all its own. She was born in Vienna and raised by an overbearing hypochondriac father, and escaped into the world of art. She began by studying the harp at the Vienna Conservatory before being trained as a boxer by Turkish prizefighter Sabri Mahir in Berlin, in the same training facility that trained only a handful of women, one of them being Marlene Dietrich. Baum's legacy had always been ebbing toward writing, which she started in her teens but didn't turn into a career until she was in her 30s. Her works were very practical, a high example of what was called the New Objectivity, a movement that came out of the post-World War I Weimar Republic that challenged the rise of Expressionism by rejecting romantic idealism. One can see that in her works, which often feature strong female protagonists battling against the turbulence of the social and economic limitations. This would not sit well with the rise of National Socialism in Germany, as her works were banned by the Third Reich. Baum was a Jew and left Germany for America when Hitler came to power. She became a citizen in the United States in 1938. There, her career flourished. She wrote more than 50 books, and most of them successful, but her visibility declined in the wake of World War II. What remains of her legacy is the 1929 book Im Menschen Hotel, or People in a Hotel, which came about after her first novel was published in 1920. Her employer encouraged her to embrace the ideals of the New Woman into her writing, that being the idea of women penetrating areas that had traditionally been denied to women by male-dominated industries. This was the product of the higher thinking of the Weimar Republic, and would become the catalyst for a series of short stories about a cast of characters who interacted at the same location over a short period of time, much like those in the works of Agatha Christie. In this case, a hotel, where her stories were wrought from her research working in a Berlin hotel for several weeks, observing the staff and guests and how they interact. The stories are serialized in magazines and then later adapted by Baum herself into a hugely successful play. This is what brought her into the sights of Irving Thalberg. In 1931, he bought the rights to the play, had William Drake translated into English, and adapted for Broadway, where it played for more than 450 performances. That success and publicity was transformed into the film. Happily, it was no less a success. Grand Hotel was the fifth best-selling film in 1932. But when Oscar came calling, it received only one nomination, that being for Best Picture. No nominations in the acting categories for John Barrymore, Lionel Barrymore, Wallace Beery, Joan Crawford, not even a nod for Garbo. No love for the writers, and no love for the director, former silent movie actor Edmund Goulding, making it the first of 5 Best Picture winners to win without a nomination for the director. It wouldn't happen again until Bruce Beresford was snubbed for Driving Miss Daisy in 1990, and then Ben Affleck for Argo in 2013, Peter Farrelly for Green Book in 2019, and Seon Heder for Coda in 2022. And no nomination for Cedric Gibbons' innovative production design, which presented a hotel lobby with a centralized check-in desk that gives the viewers a 360-degree view of the characters moving in and out of the frame. Gibbons' contribution helped revolutionize the space that film could offer to the viewer. Not just 4 walls and a handful of actors, but a sense of breaking away those walls so that we get a sense that we are in the space with them. These aren't just walls and furniture. You get a sense of the hotel, its differing rooms, and who is occupying that place. Gibbons wouldn't get a nomination for Grand Hotel, but in his lifetime he would set a career record for being nominated for production design 39 times and winning 11, including Oscars for his work on The Wizard of Oz, Gaslight, Brigadoon, and Somebody Up There Likes Me, plus Best Picture winners The Great Ziegfeld and An American in Paris. And it should be mentioned that in 1928, Gibbons also made another contribution to the art of cinema that is of interest to this series. He designed the Oscar. The reasons why the film got such a cold shoulder in everything except Best Picture remains a mystery wrapped in speculation. After more than 90 years, it remains the only Best Picture ever to do that. And sadly, the film has also largely been forgotten. When one strips away the clatter of what is to come, the rise of tabloids, paparazzi, yellow journalism, and the nastier overtones of social media, which leads to accusations of the film feeling dusty and dated, it's much easier to celebrate what's actually on the screen. Yeah, it's talky, and some of the performances feel a little stiff, and the characters at first don't seem all that appealing, but this script has a brilliant through-line narrative where you, at first, meet a group of people that you don't think you'd want anything to do with, but as the story progresses, you're challenged to rethink your initial first impression. The characters all converge on Berlin's Grand Hotel, where permanent resident Dr. Odenschlag, played by Andy Hardy regular Louis Stone, solemnly proclaims,
Grand Hotel. People coming, going, nothing ever happens.
He will bookend the film with this proclamation at the end. Of course, there's always something going on. Odenschlag, with his dour expression and a permanent war wound on his face thanks to an errant grenade, is not a major player. He's flavoring. He seems to have all the wisdom of life except in his twice-repeated assertion that nothing ever happens. Perhaps he's just being snarky. Into the picture come our major players. We meet Otto Kringlein, played by Lionel Barrymore, an accountant who's dying of an unnamed ailment and wants to spend his last few days in the lap of luxury. There's his former employee, Prizing, a bulldog industrialist played by Wallace Beery, who's on pins and needles over a pending merger because his company's going in the toilet. One suspects because Kringlein is no longer keeping the books. Into their orbit comes Baron Felix von Gergen, who has squandered his fortune and now makes his living as a card player. And by the way, a particularly nasty mob thug talks to him, sounds like he's not very good at it. He enters, quite casually, into the orbit of an aspiring actress named Flemichin, who's working as a stenographer for Prizing while he's working through his business merger. Flemichin is played in a magnificent performance by Joan Crawford as a woman who's very young, but has been screwed over enough to know when a man is working his game on her. Look at the cold shoulder she initially gives the Baron. Yeah, keep moving, player. But his smooth words and personable manner reveal that he's not just scouting. He's genuine, and she's charmed by him. Flemichin is the film's most complete character. She is worldly wise, understands her station in life and the limitations of her ambitions. She understands that as a woman, her choices are limited, that she can never achieve what Prizing has achieved, at least by the manner that he has achieved it. She falls in love with the Baron because, while there is a definite sexual attraction, it's a perk for him, not a destination. During one of their conversations, he reveals that he's in trouble with the mob over his gambling debt. She decides to help him by taking an offer from Prizing to accompany him to England to settle the disaster over the merger. It is not stated outright, but Prizing is proposing more than dictation. The extra money would help the Baron. And then into all this intrigue comes the film's least engaging character. Just after we meet Flemichin, we meet Grzinska, a Russian ballet dancer and woeful drama queen whose handlers are too protective to tell her that her career is on the rocks. They fail to tell her that her performances are only pulling in half of the audience they once did. Grzinska is so melancholy that she can barely get out of bed, maybe because every move she makes is scheduled and dictated by Suzette, her personal assistant. She's in a state of melancholy that is pushing her near suicide until she meets the Baron, who has snuck into her room to steal her pearls. He hears a proclamation of doom, and he feels for her. They fall unconvincingly in love, and she overstates a new lease on life. Now look, I adore Garbo, but this is not one of her more engaging performances. If you're looking for her best work, I direct your attention to one of her last silent films, A Woman of Affairs, and to Anna Christie, for which she got her first Oscar nomination. Mata Hari, which she made right before Grand Hotel. Ninotchka, a rare comedy made toward the end of her career. And of course, her single best performance in Queen Christina. Here, I'm just not engaged. Her character is self-involved, her mannerisms over the top. When she's sad, she's near suicide. When she's happy, she's practically floating. It's either really high or really low, but none of it is ever convincing. When she leaves to be with the Baron, she doesn't know that Prizing has already killed him. That plot thread is never really dealt with. She's really the weak link here, but everyone else is part of the narrative that allows them to grow. Kringling comes into the film as a whiner, but we feel the weight of a life spent in service of the uncaring and dismissive Prizing. Midway through the film, he confronts his boss and nearly comes to blows with him. Actually, he does come to blows with him. He's come to the Grand Hotel to spend the money that he has saved up in his waning days, but he finds that helping his new friends, first the Baron and then Flemischen, gives him more joy than just throwing it away. In the end, he's made a platonic friend in Flemischen. He agrees to support her financially, and she agrees to help him find a cure for his illness. The Baron, sadly, does not have a happy ending. At first, he seems to be a man willing to do anything and say anything to get himself out of a financial rut. But he's not cold-blooded. He's never all that he appears to be. When he meets Flemischen, she's indifferent to him, but she realizes that, no, he's a human being with a human feeling. And we see this. Early on, he sneaks into Grzelska's room to steal the pearls so that he can sell them in order to pay off the gambling debt. But when he hears her lamenting about her life and contemplating suicide, he comes out of hiding and talks to her. Shamefully, he gives the pearls back. Later, he steals Kringling's money, but when he sees the old man panicking, he returns it. But he meets a bad end. After rifling through Prizing's room for his money, he gets into a scuffle with him, and Prizing beats him to death. The commotion rouses Kringling, and Prizing claims self-defense, but Kringling calls the police, and Prizing exits the film, presumably for a jail term. I love this. Every character is just an inch deeper than we expect. Every character has an arc, and all have an ending, either happy or unhappy. I mean, we don't get full character dossiers exactly, but we get enough to feel for these people. We feel for their fate. We understand how they interact. Each is motivated by his or her actions or their personality. Each is motivated by their connection to the other person. This is good writing. And it's so rare that we get characters like this. Most movie characters are just motivated by one thing or one mission. Here, the game keeps changing, and the personality ticks are what keep them moving. There's an evolution going on here. A character evolution that I think is really refreshing. I like the structuring. We're invited to peek in on a few days of these people's lives. The movie opens by scoping in on their personal habits and their personalities, but in the end we scope back out again and we realize that they're just tiny drops in the bucket of humanity. That this Grand Hotel meets and greets and caters to their brand of human contact every day, and with every new guest that walks through the door. Just as one guest checks out, another is ready to check in. A new story is about to begin. Another adventure that is no more or less devastating than the one that just ended. People come, people go, nothing ever happens. The cosmic ballet goes on. And I have to admit, I initially dismissed Grand Hotel. On my site, Armchair Oscars, I dismissed it as a trashy bit of fun. But now my tastes have changed, and the film works much better on me. I don't see it as trash. I mean, it's no masterpiece, but it's more fleshed out and more engaging than most of the films made in 1932. I would certainly choose it over any of the 8 nominees for Best Picture that year, like Sidney Howard's adaptation of Sinclair Lewis's Aerosmith about a doctor struggling not to be a sellout, or the romantic dramedy Bad Girl based on the book by Vina Del Mar about the courtship of a couple who can never learn to trust each other, or The Champ, written by Francis Marion and directed by King Vidor about a down-on-his-luck club fighter who has nothing but the respect of his son, or Five Star Final, starring Edward G. Robinson about a newspaper editor who's willing to do anything for headlines, or Ernst Lubitsch's musical comedy 1 Hour with You about a couple who are more interested in infidelity than with each other, or von Sternberg's Shanghai Express, starring Marlene Dietrich, as a woman rekindling an old romance on board a train that has been hijacked during the Chinese Civil War, or another Ernst Lubitsch confection, The Smiling Lieutenant, featuring Marie Chevalier, Miriam Hopkins, and Claudette Colbert, about a man who accidentally marries a princess instead of the woman he loves. I don't dislike these films, but I don't think they can compete really with the films that went unnominated. like Howard Hawks' controversial Scarface Shame of a Nation featuring Paul Muni's best performance, George Cukor's What Price Hollywood, Victor Fleming's Red Dust, Early Kenton's adaptation of H.G. Wells' Island of Lost Souls, the first adaptation of Richard Connell's The Most Dangerous Game, Redheaded Woman featuring Jean Harlow's best performance, and Todd Browning's legendary Freaks, which was so controversial that it ruined his career. All of these films are great, but for me, none has had the personal impact of the Marx Brothers' misadventure Horsefeathers, their insane attack on academia and social parameters. Yeah, I know, the more active commentary can be gleaned from the likes of Duck Soup, but this movie is special in that, as a kid, it was the first of the brothers' films that I saw, and it introduced me to their brand of humor, a kind of surreal comedy that I was seeing in Warner Brothers cartoons, but done in live action and under the dreamy glow of black and white. Horsefeathers is special to me because it sustains a level of comedy that never dims even for a minute. Watching Groucho, Harpo, and Chico spread chaos from one end of Huxley College to the other, I laugh more at this film than any of the brothers' other films, and maybe more than any other comedy. I could start my day with any moment of this film. The classroom scene, the football game, the opening oration, the classic swordfish bit. It is certainly never a film that the Academy voters would have even considered, but that's okay. It has a special place in my heart. And that's kind of the value of the Academy Awards. With all the misaligned accolades that it has handed out in its first century, I think the value is that it opens debate and conversation. What is the best film of the year, and why? What are your favorite films? What do they mean to you? Did you like Grand Hotel? I certainly did. Did I prefer it over Horsefeathers? No. I think that last question illustrates the basic silliness of the whole Academy Awards business. Both films are made with different purposes, different styles, different manners of comedy. How do you pick one over the other? I know which one I like. What about you? For Armchair Cinema, I'm Jerry Dean Roberts. Thank you for joining us.
I don't know what they have to say, it makes no difference anyway, whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it.